Hello and welcome back to the Consistency Project podcast. Every week here on the show, EC and I aim to simplify the principles and practices of health, nutrition, and fitness so that you can perform better, feel better, and live better. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. My name is Patrick. I am here with a quick introduction. I will try to make it very quick because we have a long episode today. We have a great conversation that EC had recently on the CrossFit Podcast with our friend Denise Thomas. EC and Denise talk about a whole bunch, including when to stop optimizing your diet and the psychology behind food perfectionism. So again, we're going to get to that in just a minute. Before we do, one little thing. At the end of this episode, we're going to have a whole different conversation because EC recently had a chat with our friend Jason Ackerman. Jason is the co-founder of a company called Best Hour of Their Day, which works primarily with CrossFit affiliates and coaches to help up-level their operations. They are also on October 24th through the 26th in Dallas, Texas, hosting their first ever affiliate con. EC is going to be there presenting, so we wanted to make sure you knew about it. If you want to learn more, you can go to besthouroftheirday.com/affiliatecon. We'll put the link in the show notes. Here's just a quick tease of what you'll hear at the end of this episode with Jason, but here's just a little bit about what Affiliate Con is.
It's a gathering for all CrossFit walks of life, and I would even throw out there really all walks of life, but specifically affiliate owners, coaches, and members or athletes. So really anyone involved in the CrossFit space, there's going to be something for you, not just something, but 2 full days for you. And like I said, whether you coach at CrossFit or, you listen to EC because you work at Lifetime or any of the other, boutique style gyms, if you're a coach, you're going to learn.
Again, at the end of this episode, tune in. There's about a 9 or 10 minute conversation where EC and Jason talk a little bit more about Affiliate Con. And again, check out the link in the show notes if you want to learn more. October 24th in Dallas, Texas. Okay, without any further ado, let's jump into this awesome conversation. That's right, I said awesome. That is not a word we use enough, but we should. Here's an awesome conversation between EC and Denise from the CrossFit Podcast. Do enjoy.
All right, so what are we talking about today? I like to get right into it. And I think we all share this common feeling of we want to eat the right things to get the results we want. And in an effort to do that, we can create this whole world of neurosis behind nutrition. So I guess my first question for you would be, is this quest in, quote, getting it right, making us overly neurotic about how we should be more healthy and fit?
Yes, it is.
Question.
Next question. No, I think there's this huge push to always be 1% better. And in fact, we even have it in the CrossFit community a little bit. Of course, we're always chasing improvements in our fitness. We always like to see the pull-ups increase. We always like to see our running times decrease, all of that stuff. And it's true and it's wonderful. But I do think there is a point in nutrition in which you can be done. It doesn't mean you're done in the sense of you get to have popcorn and beer every night. You do have to continue to eat the right dose of foods. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that. But there is a point at which there is no more 1% to be had in nutrition. That it's more of, I've figured out the diet that works for me, in CrossFitter's case, to optimize my fitness. And I'm going to continue to do that day in and day out. And there's no more, most optimal combination of fruits and vegetables to be had. There's no more, I now have to have locally sourced heirloom tomatoes to all of a sudden have this next 1%. There's no more meal timing to be done. There is a point at which you meet your nutrient needs in a combination of foods you actually can sustain, and then you just ride that diet off into the sunset. Meanwhile, you continue to chase the more pull-ups and the push-ups, etc.
How do we know when we're at that point of, like, you're using your words, like, we're done? Because CrossFit is this, we're always chasing something, and maybe that mindset that we have in the gym kind of trickles into our food. Are there any indicators of when we should be done?
Yeah, I think there's some common principles that I think we're going to get into that we have to address in our diet. Things like calories and macros and making sure we're getting enough quality foods in the diet. So there is a little bit of basis of looking at the foods that we're eating and that type of stuff. But then I think it's really outcome based. And this is something that I really did take from CrossFit going forward with my own nutrition stuff. from Greg being just so focused on what's the outcome. We can have all these theories about this might be better and this combination of foods might be better and this, I don't know, whatever timing might be better. But in the case of CrossFit, did it increase my fitness? And so, yeah, if your performance markers are going up, your health markers are going down or towards within normal ranges, you found the diet, you're done. Again, assuming it addresses things like calories, macros, and micros to some degree, but that's your judge of when I am done. You don't have to keep obsessing about the next new viral trend or, making it more optimal.
I've heard you say in some of your other platforms, like the Consistency Project, which is a awesome podcast, super short, lots of information. I've heard you say things like people focus sometimes on the data, almost like a little bit, which is counterintuitive to some things, that like the journey and not actually what is happening. Is that what you're referring to? Is, well, it doesn't look exactly how it should on paper, but I'm getting the results. I'm doing something.
I think what I see it as, especially with nutrition, we can get so lost in the mechanisms. We can get so lost on what might be a hormonal response from something. We can get so lost in the idea of like what my muscle protein synthesis numbers might be when I take a post-workout protein shake. But what we're really looking for, I think, is better back squats, more pull-ups, and a better body composition. So we have to remember to always keep checking in with the outcome. If your outcome's fitness, we're checking in with that. If the outcome is physique, we're checking in with that. If the outcome is fasting glucose, we're checking with that. Yes, there's some interesting stuff, plenty of stuff to be learned about what's happening inside the box, as we would say, in terms of physiology, but we still have to always keep checking in with the outcome. And that's really our guidance for like what's going right, if you will.
Yeah. And I'd like to ping pong back and forth between kind of your competitors and also your normies. We'll call them, I'm a normie. Does that apply also to the competitors? Let's say your CrossFit Games hopefuls or people that are actually doing it right now. Are they ever done?
That's a good distinction. I do think for people that are truly the top 1%, we're talking about people who at the professional level, putting food on their table because of athleticism, they are going to keep chasing these 1% because 1% matter. For our Gen Pop and even very high level fitness in Gen Pop, like really, really, really fit people, but they're still, have a regular job. The difference between a 6-minute mile and a 5:59 mile is completely irrelevant to their health risk, to their quality of life. They don't need that quote 1%. But yeah, that matters in a competition. That 1 second could be the difference between first and second place. And what's really interesting is when you get to the top 1% level, when you get to the Olympics or when you get to the CrossFit Games, is then there's all of this stuff with the mindset and belief that comes into play, where they might have the belief that taking this supplement will give them better performance. And guess what? They should then take that supplement, not because there's necessarily clinical data that it will make them run faster, but that belief can actually make them run faster. And there was a really interesting study I saw about placebo effect, and most athletes, I think it was something like in the 70%, were willing for their coach to lie to them about the effect of a supplement if it would help their performance. So to be told like, oh yeah, you'll definitely be stronger if you take this. They're like, oh yeah, tell me that. Tell me the lie, because guess what? It can improve my performance. But that's the only avenue in which those 1% really start to matter, because that's the difference between first and second place. Where the rest of us, there is a point at which improving that has no relevance for us.
You've been around the community a long time. You were a CrossFit Flow Master, one of the original ones from like 2006 to 2017, since when you departed. You've talked to a lot of people when it comes to nutrition. And even with your business now, I'm sure you talk to hundreds, if not thousands of people. Why do you think we have this need for perfection when it comes to how we eat?
Well, I think some of it is definitely driven by online media. I like to say that we're in the attention economy. We're not in the accuracy economy. And so there's no shortage of individuals who are trying to get your attention, clicks, because that's what drives their revenue, whether ads or whatever, affiliate links and stuff like that. And so, to get attention, I try to preach the basics every day, but guess what? If I just do a single post every day that says, okay, fruits and vegetables are good for you, I can tell you that my follower count is not going to go up. So there's an incessant kind of push for creators, influencers, experts, whoever it is, to stay relevant in their field. And a lot of times you have to come up with new and interesting ways to do that. And so I think sometimes, creators, it's like, well, how many times can I say fruits and vegetables, or experts, how many times can I say fruits and vegetables are good for you? You start looking at other things. You start looking at these 1% maybe mechanisms, because what else are you going to keep talking about? So I do think a lot of it is actually driven by more of our media space than necessarily, people always wanting something new. But there is also an internal drive for us liking new things. It turns out that's also helps us from an evolutionary perspective. We learned new things. We were able to adapt and become, better and skilled. So there is also this kind of like of new things. And then also in our media environment, I think it's totally ripe for focusing on all the shiny objects instead of just hammering consistency.
And there are a lot of shiny objects.
Yes.
There are so many. It's exhausting, and you get decision fatigue when you're just a click away from the next new thing. But your social media, you see, you're funny. And I'm saying that like you're probably like, wait, you said that like I didn't think I was funny. And why I say that for people that will not know this is EC and I met you. I first met you in 2009, actually, and it was a CrossFit New England team event where it was a 3-person event. Mm-hmm. And I was with Dave Lipson and Tim Carroll, and I remember you being there. And then again, obviously on our journey through seminar stuff, like you were one of my mentors. And I was telling Maggie, our producer, when we were bringing you on, like I've had your name on this list for forever. And I'm like, I can't wait to get EC on, but man, she terrified me back in the day in the best way, because you were so put together, so professional, so articulate, well-read, and all the things. So every time I worked with you and under you, I was like, I cannot miss that. I have to hit this. And so I took all that good from you and I tried to implement it into myself. And I was like, okay, I got my notes here. And if you're listening to this in your car, I've got a massive piece of paper with everything, because I'm like, I have to be ready. So you have this kind of persona of being that very structured and rigid in some ways and educated. But man, you are so funny.
Oh, thank you.
I want to pull up a clip in a second, but where do you get your inspiration for your Instagram posts? Because they're like,
I don't know. I think some of it is laughing at me. Like, social media is hard. You have to kind of be loud. And again, you're trying to drive attention to what you want to say. And so you try to bring some edge, although I try to, of course, stay to the basics and true and what I think is actually going to be useful. And yeah, I think you kicked off the podcast a little bit by talking about some neuroses and perfectionism, and I was definitely there. And so sometimes I think people think I'm making fun of them. I did all of the stuff that I say don't do. I did all of it. I didn't eat a banana for 3 years. I used to travel with balsamic vinegar packets for seminar staff because I was afraid of the different salad dressings. Like I did all of that stuff. So a lot of times I'm making fun of my own neurotic behavior that I was like, oh my God, what phase was that? So yeah, it's just a little trying to have a little bit of fun, trying to get people interested.
I want to pull this up. I'm pulling up something from EC's Optimize Me Instagram account.
It is time.
She's got whole grain, whole wheat bread, banana, peanut butter, and she's eating it. And she says, you can learn anything on the internet. What was your inspiration behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the stuff that I fell for. Like, I didn't eat a banana for 3 years because of blood sugar spikes. I thought grains were all killing us. I thought seed oils were a problem. And it turns out when you go to the literature, all of that is incorrect. When you actually look at the peer-reviewed literature, all of the things that we tend to fearmonger, it's almost like bizarro world on social media. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that we're in the attention economy. We're not in the accuracy economy. And so to find out, oh my gosh, fruit could be hurting me, of course people are going to click. And of course that's going to drive a lot of traffic because it's just so shocking. And so, yeah, the inspiration was really just kind of picking up on some of the fears, again, that I fell into, that I believed for a period of time, and trying to let people know that, like, hey, you know what? It turns out banana and whole grains is actually a healthy snack. And we see that risk reduces when people include these foods in our diet, including, in fact, seed oils, which I know is a big contentious topic on the internet, but we actually find cardiovascular disease risk goes down when people increase their omega-6 intake, especially when they're replacing saturated fats.
Can you say a little bit more about seed oils?
Yeah, so seed oils, I mean, back in our day, Denise, when I was in my afraid of everything phase, they were called just vegetable oils, but they're pretty much one and the same. And they're found in virtually all of our processed foods. And so there are people that'll say, okay, well, our consumption of seed oils have gone up, and therefore our heart, all of our chronic disease problems have gone up, and therefore, our seed oils are to blame. What I think is more likely to blame is that we're just simply over-consuming processed foods, which, yes, contain seed oils, but it's not just the seed oils per se. It's the dose of them combined with the extra dose of calories that is the problem in modern diets, not the seed oils per se. So there are things like canola oil, soybean oil. Again, it's going to be in any processed food. There's going to be this. But when we look at randomized controlled trials where they can actually divide people and control the diet and put in a certain amount of seed oils versus a different type of oil, we find that it does not increase health risk. And in fact, health risk is reduced, again, especially when these seed oils displace saturated fats in the diet.
Wow. Yeah, it's easy to just see the clickbait and be like, okay, I'm not going to consume that anymore. But you really get into the research of it. You are constantly read up on new studies and things, and I think that's a really good reason why people love going to your content. You have you have like 9 master's degrees.
2. Okay.
You have 2, and one of them is in environmental sciences with a focus on genetics.
Yeah.
But your second master's degree is in nutrition and functional medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just interested in what was taught to you in that curriculum, and what are you doing? Do they share commonalities? Is there a lot of nonsense in that, or were they on the right path with what you were learning there?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I also had a undergrad degree in biochem engineering. I had a lot of hard sciences, and so some of my masters, that nutrition masters in the beginning, I would say was a little bit of a review. I had some truly phenomenal courses in autoimmunity, gastrointestinal disorders, and also a hormonal imbalances class. So I think it was definitely worth it. And I think overall the curriculum was pretty good. But I will say as a whole, I think there's a lot of woo in functional medicine. I think there's this idea that everything can be cured naturally. And I think there's a lot of harm in that. I think there's a lot of harm in neuroticism in that when people have a true diagnosed condition, they're not going to fix it with an orange. And it's almost, there's this level of just like, I don't know, something really ugly about it too, that when people are really suffering with the disease, and to suggest that they might have brought it on themselves because they just didn't eat enough fruits and vegetables is really kind of gross. And I know people have spoken about that before publicly, and I don't want to rename them, but it's just like there comes to be a lot of shame because people, for example, who are diagnosed with cancer, and it's like, oh, I just didn't eat healthy enough. And it's like, that's not the case. Certainly we can do things that can reduce our risk, but not all cases can we completely eliminate our risk. And so I think the problem with functional medicine is this idea of totally rejecting conventional medicine, when really there can be a great marriage, if you will, between the two. Excuse me, where it's like, yeah, let's do all the preventative stuff. Let's exercise for sure. Let's eat healthy. Let's eat those fruits and veggies. Let's not smoke. Let's decrease stress, all of that stuff. But then when we have a condition, let's go ahead and use modern medicine for what it's really good for. And that can be very life-saving.
We recently interviewed Dr. Palmer, and he was talking about metabolic health and mental health and how they're kind of, they're very inextricably linked. And he was saying the same thing. It's like, let's not just push away conventional medicine. Like, some people really need it, but how are we using it and to what extent? So interesting that it's a theme. We always have these common themes. But you mentioned functional foods, and I just watched your podcast with Patrick Cummings, who's your co-host on the Consistency Project. And one of the articles that you were talking about was this functional foods that's now out there in the industry. What are functional foods? Are they going to save the day?
I don't think so. It's our new way to capture your attention, of course, to sell more products. And it's a way I really like the way one of the articles that I cited said it. It's like this health halo around foods. It's basically processed foods. Maybe they've put, some probiotics in cookie dough, I think was an example, or, maybe it's like protein chips. When you look at it, it's just a calorically dense food that they've added some ingredient that they can now market it as healthy. And the problem with this health halo is a lot of times people will then justify their consumption of it by being like, oh, it's healthy, it's got probiotics, or oh, it's healthy because it's got protein in my chips. When in reality, they end up just eating the same amount of calories as, I don't know, Doritos, or pick your, classic conventional food of choice. And so it's no different. It's no different. People are like, oh, it has more nutrients in it. It's like, well, if you overshoot calories, we have a problem there too. Eating the right quantity of food, AKA calories or macronutrients, are ultimately related to your health as well. And so it's just a great marketing ploy to sell more processed food.
And it works, sadly.
It works.
It works. It's very effective. So what about if they came up with protein peeps?
Yeah. So, my like of Peeps. I know I'm probably way too old for the overly sugary marshmallows, but yes, I still enjoy them. I think, one of the things that is important to understand is I do think any food can be part of a healthy diet, to include Peeps. So even if they came out with some protein Peeps, I could fit them into my diet. It's just understanding the right dose of them, right? So then trying to use, let's say, protein infused Peeps as my main protein source is when we'd start running to a problem. But if I continue to have that as part of my discretionary calories, that's just fine.
That's funny. Every time I see Peeps, I think of you.
I know people send me all like the new flavors, and it's great.
I want to talk about macronutrients, specifically carbohydrates, but tell me if I'm right in this. Like right now, protein is like the sexy macronutrient. It's like, which is a good thing that people now are taking that more seriously, and they're really trying to get more protein into their diets. But carbohydrates, they're the more controversial and probably emotional macronutrient. So we can't talk about food neurosis without talking about carbohydrates. So I want to ask you, can you give us the cold, honest truth? What do we need to know about carbohydrates as it relates to optimizing health and fitness?
Dose. There's always an appropriate dose. And so you have to look at the context of the individual and how much are they eating to determine if that dose is appropriate for them. And so if we take the standard American diet, the dose of carbohydrates for most Americans is entirely too high. We're eating too many of them. We're eating too many of the refined carbohydrates. They're all too easy to overeat, and they're so delicious. We're eating too many. The dose is too high. We're not moving as a general population. We're not active enough. But then if we come into the CrossFitter space and we have people who are exercising at high intensity, carbohydrates are going to be part of optimizing their performance. I mean, CrossFit relies heavily on the glycolytic pathway, which is fueled by carbohydrates and carbohydrates only. And so if you want to maximize your power output in short, high intensity scenarios, you're going to want to have carbohydrates. That doesn't mean you're going to go home and only eat sugar cookies. That means you're going to have the right dose appropriate for us, right? And so I think what happens a lot of times is people will hear carbs are bad. And I would say on a very large scale for the American population, them becoming more concerned about their carbohydrate intake would be a good thing. But to go to the complete end of the other opposite end of the spectrum and to say, well, now I'm not eating any carbs, to include, oh my gosh, fruit has too much sugar, and oh my gosh, I'm never going to have sweet potatoes or banana where I live for too long, that's completely incorrect as well. That there is an appropriate dose for you, your current fueling activity and your goals, and we just have to figure out what that is.
And you've said before that understanding your metabolic baseline is really critical to understanding that level of carbohydrates. What is your metabolic baseline and why is it so important?
Yeah, it's just really understanding what intake is appropriate for you. And with 74% of Americans being overweight or obese, we're clearly overshooting what that should be on average just across the population. And so it's really recalibrating and figuring out, okay, what's the level of intake that will fuel a healthy weight, or in the case of CrossFitters, fuel an increase in performance. And that's why, I mean, to be honest, the second line of keep the 100 words of fitness, or fitness in 100 words, is so beautiful. Keep intake to levels that will support exercise and not body fat. Perfect. Perfect. That's the quantity that we have to establish what our baseline is. And most people don't know what it is. And just to keep going a little bit on there, it's also because it's hard to do. Like weighing and measuring your food is way, 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 way harder than not doing it. Yes. Combined with the fact that everywhere you go, not just grocery stores, but gas stations, drugstores, home stores, craft stores, the bank, everywhere you go, there is an opportunity to make the wrong choice. And so guess what? We're overeating on average. Our dose is too high, our quantity is too high, our baseline is overshot.
And we understand that that's the average individual and I'm talking about outside of the CrossFit community, but within the CrossFit community, again, in this quest for optimizing your health and fitness and learning new things, do you think it's possible that we could be using the CrossFit workouts to validate our desire for higher carbohydrate intake? Like, as an example, meaning, I do my one workout a day. And that could be high intensity for 5 minutes or maybe 25, 30 minutes. But the rest of the day, I'm sitting quite a bit, like maybe 3-4 hours, whether it's work or TV. And then inside of that, I'm kind of meandering around and getting up when I need to, maybe walk the dog for a mile or two. And so, but I'm like, oh, hey, I do CrossFit, so I need more carbohydrates. I was like, do you think we use that sometimes as a bit of a crutch?
Maybe. I mean, I'd probably want to answer a little bit more by individual than kind of just painting a broad brush, because there are going to be some athletes who, and I don't just mean games athletes, but it could just be a very active CrossFitter who definitely can fit in discretionary calories like donuts regularly. Because at the end of the day, you want to think about it like a puzzle. There's a certain amount of calories that we need for our health and for our performance, and that can be broken down into the different macronutrients. And then there's the different 28 micronutrients, the 15 different minerals, the 13 different vitamins. How you want to put the foods together to hit those right endpoints, there can be lots of combinations of foods to do that and to do that in a healthy way. Like, I'm going to tell you, Denise, that if you skew most of your whole foods towards, especially your carb sources, we'll say carbs in quotes, towards bell peppers and spinach, you're going to have more budget to spend on donuts in that day and still be healthy. Conversely, if you use more potatoes or bananas or rice for your carbohydrates, you're not going to have as much budget for the donuts because you've spent them on those higher carb things. So this is what's really hard about answering some nutrition questions, is people often want these yes or no answers like, okay, aren't donuts bad? And it's like, well, maybe not. I mean, if you got like 5 grams of carbohydrates because all you've done is eat spinach all day, well, yeah, you can have a donut because that's only going to take you up to, 100 grams of carbs on the day.
Yeah, you have to negotiate. You negotiate. It's like, I'm gonna eat this, but I know it doesn't have all the macronutrient quality that I need. However, sustainability requires that I give myself that break.
Yeah, well, there's a couple good things in there, but the value of any food is only judged in the context of everything else you eat. Donuts can be good and donuts can be bad. Now show me the rest of the diet and I'll tell you the answer, right? Instead of just being like, oh gosh, I fear them, I'm never eating them. Or, oh gosh, I'm going to eat more of them. It's like, okay, well, let's see the rest of the diet and I'll tell you which of the answers was correct. But I think you picked on something that I really did not appreciate until working with a lot more clients than my CrossFit time. And that is, for people to actually stick to a diet, they have to like it.
Let's do that.
Turns out you actually have to like your diet to stick to it. And when you look at the statistics on weight loss and weight loss maintenance, which I know CrossFit's more focused on the fitness outcome, but in my nutrition realm, people are a little bit more focused on the weight outcome. When you look at the statistics on weight loss maintenance, you start to question your sanity as a nutrition coach because it's absolutely dismal. We're talking about that diet and exercise on average only takes off 5% of people's weight in the long term. Meaning if somebody's 200 pounds in the long term, let's say after 6 months or a year, we only expect them to take off 10 pounds. That 80% of the weight people lose is regained in 2 years, 90% in 5 years. And this is a crazy stat. There's 1 in 10 chance that somebody can achieve that 5% weight loss this year. There's a 1 in 10 chance on average that somebody is 200 pounds will lose 10 pounds this year. So when you look at how bad we're failing on the diet and exercise front, you start to have to question yourself of, okay, how can I actually make this sustainable? Or for my clients, how can I actually get them to be successful? Guess what? They have to like it. If you want them to do this forever, they're going to have to like it. So now it's figuring out, okay, there is some amount of donuts. We're going to keep using donuts. There is some amount of donuts that we can eat. It turns out on average, we're overeating them, but there is some amount that once we get within the proper quantity dose for our body, our genetics, our goals, that we can have, and it's okay. And that's going to help them actually stick to the diet, in which case you could start to argue how valuable the donuts are because it provides sustainability for people.
It's really interesting. And I'll use myself as an example. And maybe there are people out there that are on my way of thinking. I've been in the health and fitness space since I was 16 years old. I've accumulated a lot of understanding on food. I'm by no means an expert, but I know what to do in order to get the needle going the right way. I understand quantity relative to your goals. I've got all this information, and I give advice to people on, hey, it's okay, like you're saying, you can eat the donut. It's all right. That's not going to spiral you all the way to sickness with one donut. However, mentally, it causes havoc on my psychology of it at times. And I think, and I'm not ashamed to say it, it's like, okay, I want to do this, and I do, and I enjoy it. But then there's a little bit of me that's still like, but should I have done that? Am I really setting myself back? And I don't know if you have any examples, without obviously using names, of how do you manage that relationship of the psychology of food when you're trying to help somebody understand that, hey, you have to like it. In order for you to like it, you need to eat the things that you enjoy and also not beat yourself up about it in the process.
Yeah. Well, if I could answer the psychology question, my nutrition program would have millions of people in it today.
You don't have an answer? I said you had all the answers.
No, I've got some thoughts. Don't worry. I'll yammer on for a minute here. But yeah, I mean, psychology, that's what's so interesting about nutrition is from a physiological perspective, it's quite easy what we need to do. Now let's get to the real world and deal with like free living humans with psychology. Now it becomes a really, really difficult problem to solve. But so, yeah, controlling people's thoughts, controlling people's feelings. Like, again, if I had the answer for that one, I would have no shortage of people in my program. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I do help people understand is to get rid of food shame and guilt. And it's not just because they have to enjoy their diet, but when you eat something like the donut, we're just staying on the donut trend here. When you eat something like a donut, you know, your body's not going, oh gosh, you just ate a donut. Your body breaks it down, and then your liver, which is kind of the central clearinghouse for nutrients, just starts sorting the nutrients. And so I always like to describe it as a mail distribution center, like the post office, that something comes in and they're just putting it into the different bins of where it needs to go. Now, it turns out in the standard American diet, we have carbs and fat just coming in. And so the bins, when they keep distributing where things need to go, the bins for carbs and fat are just overflowing. In fact, they're taking over rooms at the mail house. The bins for magnesium and fiber are empty. But it's not like the liver's going, oh gosh, you just had donuts. Oh gosh, you just had cheesecake. It's going, okay, there's more carbs, more fat, more carbs and fat. Where am I going to put it? Where am I going to put it? And so that's where we have to remove some guilt. There really isn't a problem with those foods so long as the dose is correct. And that's what we have to get right. And of course, address the other nutrients where the baskets are empty: magnesium, potassium, fiber. You get the idea.
Yeah, it always come back to the dose.
Yes.
It's a good way of thinking about it. It takes time still for you to psychologically be okay with it. But I think that's just such a good anchor it's the dose. It's the dose. It's the dose.
I joke around that should have been the second name of the podcast because we come back around to that all the time. How much, who's the person, what's the context, and that answers the question for us.
I know. And I really hate asking you these broad kind of grenade questions on like, who should eat carbohydrates at a high level? And because I know that it is always in the context, but I do think the answers that you provide give people pause for thought and they can start to maybe explore it.
Well, if you don't mind, if I'll just jump in real quickly, one of the things I've posted before is that, you know, especially for CrossFitters looking up to their CrossFit Games athletes, I think what they should mimic is more of the hard work and the consistency ethic than necessarily their diets. And that's a perfect example of where the dose is completely skewed, where the amount of processed foods that a typical CrossFitter would get on any single day is not very high when they have to look at all of the other nutrients they need to meet, where somebody who's a top games athlete cannot do it on broccoli and apples. I mean, that's a cute idea, but it's not going to actually work. And so the dose is so different between the two. And when people are like, wow, I really want to be like Rich Froning, it's more like, okay, we'll work really freaking hard. That's what you need to focus on, not necessarily the diet, because that's a great example of where the dose is so different.
Yeah, good point. And I suppose it's the same on the other end of the spectrum too. I mean, we're talking about a higher consumption of these processed foods, but it can also go to the other side of now you're afraid to eat them because you like what you're seeing and you're getting the results. And now it's kind of, and I guess just going back to the outcome that doesn't just include your performance, but also your overall health
Health
metrics.
markers. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to talk a little bit about your time with CrossFit because people that have been in it for a while will know who you are and they'll know the impact you have. But we have a lot of new CrossFitters now that may not be quite familiar with you. And I have a whole list here of what you did for CrossFit, and it's overwhelming. It's like you're like the octopus. You had your tentacles across all of CrossFit. Can you just give us a quick overview? What was your role or roles back then when you were with the company?
Yeah. Yeah. So 2006 to 2017, I was on seminar staff, but in 2011 is when I was also brought on full time in the training department, I guess now the EDU department, to work for Dave and Nicole on some of the administrative back end of running the seminars and content and all of that stuff. I think my title was program manager. Yeah. And I think Greg used to describe it as, you're basically training a person for your job 6 months after you started it. It was just a huge period of hyper growth. So it definitely was a role of many hats. So yeah, heavily involved on the content behind the level 1 and the level 2 seminars and accreditation and tests and translation. It was a great time, again, because it was just exploding. And so it was also really cool. One of the reasons I had resigned my environmental consulting job to work for CrossFit was simply because I wasn't seeing enough of my work in like an outcome. Like, you could work all day and it could be really interesting, but you didn't really actually feel like you were making any difference. And so, of course, with CrossFit, I got that in spades.
You're the person who is, give it, I got it, and it'll be done just like that. The streamliner. You were involved when you were a program manager, which involved operations and product, onboarding new people, reviewing their plans, tracking performance. You were a product manager. You worked in customer service, training people, HR. You were one of the leaders of the events to include the CrossFit Games. Was one of the head coaches. You were involved in our translation, which takes all our information and makes it so that other languages can learn the goods that we have. And you actually cut costs by 25%. Also, you decreased admin time by 65%, which means you went from all this manual kind of duct tape and spreadsheets to systems that would allow us for more productivity. And you had a huge hand alongside Nicole Carroll in making our level 1 course ANSI accredited, which was a huge lift. And you did all this between 2006 to 2017 when CrossFit was at its height of growth. It was crazy. Can you speak a little bit about how fast paced that might have been?
It was, to me, I loved it. Like, I love the challenge. I also really like taking a problem and making it simpler. Some of that actually does come out of my environmental consulting work, which I can speak to, but I loved it. I loved having the new challenge. And then once something got to steady state a little bit, I was like, cool, what's the next, crazy thing that's going on to make better? So I really liked it. Oh, yeah. You just mentioned translations. It just brought some flashback. I spent many, many days, and people are going to think I'm absolutely crazy, but like proofreading Japanese and Korean, because we would have professional translators, but they wouldn't speak CrossFit. So then I would take the translation and go to our subject matter experts, our trainers in those countries, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, this isn't CrossFit. They would make edits. But to save all of the back and forth, sometimes I would make sure that the companies were inserting their edits. And so I came to really like Korean because it was a lot easier for me to distinguish when the letters were correct versus like Japanese or Arabic, which got really, really tough to do. But yeah, it was just like some crazy stuff like that was like, okay, well, let's give it a shot, see what happens. Here we go.
So you had made mention earlier about world-class fitness in 100 words, and the first 2 lines there are what we call our CrossFit prescription, and eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. Keep your intake to levels that support exercise, not body fat. And if we take those 2 sentences and we separate them, the first one speaks to quality. The second one speaks to quantity. What was your first impressions when you heard these 2 lines?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about fitness in 100 words. I think, just stepping back even like from just the first 2 sentences, I think as fitness in 100 words, it's like absolutely beautiful. It's brilliant. It encapsulates all of it. Like, I couldn't do a better job in fitness in 100 words. I don't know that I could do a better job of the first 2 sentences for nutrition. I think it's really elegant. It's it's gorgeous. But I also start to wonder, that does that necessarily mean that everything that could ever be said about a topic has to be, letter to the law of fitness in 100 words? One of the things I joked about on a chat with Rory McKernan was like, part of fitness in 100 words is do pirouettes, flips, splits, and holds. Well, let me tell you the last time I did a pirouette, flip, split, or hold. I haven't. I mean, I guess I did some L-sits this morning, so I guess I did do a hold. But pirouettes, flips and splits, I haven't. So does that mean I'm not doing CrossFit? So that's when you start to have to question, like, well, okay, this is beautiful. In terms of like describing something in 100 words, it's absolutely elegant, of course, as Greg can do. But does that mean that every single aspect and every single context is covered by those words? I don't know.
Well, people don't know this about you, but you were a synchronized swimmer. So
I still wasn't doing pirouettes, flips, splits, and holds. Oh my goodness.
So funny. Well, you raise a good point, because a lot of, I imagine what a lot of people think when they first see that first line, meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. They look at it and they're like, huh? Like, no sugar, only meat? Well, I'm a vegetarian. Nope, I'm not doing that. Stupid. Like, what is really being said in that first sentence? And how is it in your mind supposed to be applied?
Yeah, I think it's eat mostly whole foods in the appropriate quantities, which is, I guess I wrapped in the second sentence there, but that's ultimately what CrossFit taught. I'd have to, we'd have to ask Greg exactly to go word by word on the meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, and exactly what he meant. But ultimately what we taught, especially with something like the zone diet, it did not only require strict paleo. So it's just sort of capturing the essence of like, this needs to be a whole food based diet in the right quantities. And that's what we're after.
Yeah. And it doesn't speak to quantities in that first sentence outside of some and little, and everyone, well, what's some and what's little? What is that?
The second sentence.
Back to the neurosis though, too. It's this like, I don't know what some is. Is this some? Is this little? Oh my God.
But that's why I think the second sentence is so beautiful. And unfortunately it never is. People never say it with it. Keep intake to levels that will support exercise, not body fat. Will support exercise. That's really interesting. That dose is going to change depending on who we're looking at. Yeah.
And CrossFit historically used the zone to get this point across. Can you give us a little backstory and maybe just like a quick elevator pitch on why the zone was the method for this concept?
As far as I understood, Greg actually had one-on-one experience with Dr. Sears implementing with athletes. And of course, they saw tremendous success. I think what's so beautiful about the zone, not necessarily the specifics of it, I actually don't subscribe to the notion that we have to be in a perfectly 40-30-30 diet, although I believe a mixed macronutrient diet is going to be the most sustainable and also the most optimal for somebody doing high intensity training. It's just the ratios don't have to be so precise. But nevertheless, I think one of the things that Greg really hammered on, and I do believe in, is the idea of measurement. And he was so good with this with definitions, but also true with diet. And it's through all of what I do as well. Like, we have to be actually measuring this stuff. You can't just sort of say, well, I'm going to eat more protein. I'm going to eat the right amount. Well, what the heck does that mean? How are we measuring it? Is it consistent? And then we look at our outcomes and see, does it change? And so the zone diet really did that for people. It brought measurement to the diet in, again, a way that you can be highly successful. Obviously that was proven over years. I think there's other ways to be highly successful in a quantitative approach to the diet. But this idea that, hey, we actually have to look at the inputs in a quantitative way, not just sort of describe our diet in terms of the foods that we eat, is pivotal to outcomes. And I think that's a lot of the confusion that we see in the space today. It's kind of like, well, should I eat donuts or not? It's like, well, how many carbohydrates have you eaten today and what is your need? And then I can tell you the answer. I can't just say a black or white yes or no.
We're going to take a quick break. So EC, welcome to Every Question Counts, my favorite segment. Are you ready?
Yes.
In 3, 2, 1. Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite smell?
Coffee.
Ooh, good one. Favorite kind of food? Maybe a tough
Peeps.
one. Okay, I'm going to come back to Peeps. I should have known that. Stupid question, Denise. Favorite vegetable?
Sorry, I know you're saying not thinking, but then people are going to be like, that's not a vegetable. So then I got to think of a vegetable. So I'm going to say pan-fried green beans.
Oh, okay. We have to choose Peeps or Diet Coke?
I got to go Diet Coke because of its versatility and just ability to use it a little bit more than Peeps every day.
Yeah, it's not like you can have Peeps with every meal. Favorite place visited?
Norway.
Oh, beautiful. Very expensive, but beautiful.
Yeah.
Name one pet peeve.
Noise.
All right. Something that scares you.
Oh gosh, one of my clients decided to pick up skateboarding. I'm not doing that.
Act out your favorite emoji.
This one.
That's the
laughing out loud.
Something you'd like to do before you die.
Probably visit like Bali or somewhere in the South Pacific.
That's a good endeavor. One thing CrossFitters need to know.
Simple can be effective.
Finish this sentence. Nutrition is
Self-care.
beautiful. So nice. Well, congratulations, Issa. You made it through. Every question counts. Let's get back to the show. I've heard you say on other podcasts, I just listened to one with you on street parking with Miranda from like a year ago. It was great. And you were talking about all the different protocols that you've engaged in. And ultimately, in the beginning, it was all about finding the superior way, like what is the optimal way. And then other times you would engage in protocols that were just purely experimental. Can you just share some of those with our listeners? Like, I'm really interested in the potato hack diet.
The potato hack diet. Yeah, I did it. I mean, this is what I mean is when people think I'm like attacking them on social media, I'm usually like 99.9% of the time, it's going to be making fun of myself. I did the potato hack diet. You know, what was interesting about the potato hack diet is you're only allowed to eat boiled potatoes. And of course it was like, you know, to improve your body composition in the short term. But I actually did learn something from it. And it was one of those things that that was just sort of surprising about it. And I learned that like starting to pay attention to hunger, because it's like when you can only eat potatoes, but you can eat as much as you want of it. That was the whole premise of the diet. You start to be like, well, I'm not really that hungry because all I have to eat is potatoes. So I did actually take something away from it, although it's crazy, non-sustainable. I don't recommend it to people. I don't know. I did super low carb, no sugar, no processed, like super strict paleo. I did macros for a while, overshooting protein by a ton. I did zone for a bit as well. I didn't have as much success with zone simply because, you know, I'm like 6 feet tall and the block chart only goes up to like 14 blocks. I think if I had just increased my block count to something that was actually relevant to my body size, it would have been more sustainable for me. But what else did I do? I don't know. Intermittent fasting, you know, all the stuff. Yeah.
The dose, EC. The dose.
I know. And that's one of the things that I didn't understand. You know, it was just sort of like, oh, well, this table is it, and I should only use that. And it's like, okay, well, you know, you're obviously taller than even average sized men. Like maybe we should go ahead and increase the dose. But I just wasn't there yet in my understanding of nutrition.
I want to talk about your transition out of CrossFit and into Optimize Me Nutrition. But I do have to ask this quickly. We talk about measuring and it being important so that we have data to tweak and things. But what if I really don't like measuring? Let's say I purely just don't like it, or maybe I had some pre-existing relationship with food that is not going to be healthy for me. How do you recommend that we get around being more precise without maybe that stress?
Yeah, one of the concepts I really like in nutrition is there's always trade-offs. We always have to give up something to get what we want. So we can try all of the lack of precision that you want. We can try the no sugar, we can try the paleo, we can try whatever. If it's not getting the results you want, and it turns out the results you want, especially if we're talking about in terms of body composition, come down to quantitative endpoints, what is the quantity that you're eating, then you're going to have to decide if that level of effort or attention to your diet is worth it. And I'm not here to tell you if it is. It's a trade-off that if you're not getting the results you want from the other methods that you've tried, then you have to decide that I am ready to then track on the variables that are going to control the result.
Awesome. Okay, so needless to say, you had a huge impact in CrossFit, in the evolution and the growth. Least not your input in the level 1 manual and how you took a lot of Greg's things and you put it down so that us normies could understand it. And I know you love CrossFit, you still do it, but moving on from the company and into something else, what was that transition like for you?
Hard. You know, I'd grown up with CrossFit, not just the company itself was getting bigger and growing, but also it was such a formative period of my own professional development, right? And I had so many great friends and projects to work on. it was hard. Ultimately, I realized that I needed a new challenge and change. I think I had mentioned to you before that like I really liked it when there was some big new problem, and that when things got to be steady state, I was a little bit like little less interested in the job, not the full job, but that specific task. And so I kind of felt that way towards the end of my tenure, that it was sort of getting a lot of the steady state and not so much of the hyper growth. And so for me, I just was like, okay, professionally, where is this going for me? And I would need a new challenge and change. So I got that in spades, doing my own thing and stepping outside.
Sure.
So yeah, hard, very hard, very hard.
Well, I have to say, we miss you. We miss you a lot. I miss you. And but luckily, you went off and you started something real cool, Optimize Me Nutrition, and it's got a lot of the similar principles from CrossFit. You've brought some things over with you, but just like broad strokes, where did the idea of Optimize Me Nutrition come from, and what's its mission?
Yeah. So when I say like the transition was hard, my original idea of what I was going to do is not what I'm doing at all. So the idea for what I'm doing now was not when I left CrossFit. When I left CrossFit, I had just finished my master's in nutrition and functional medicine. And my idea was that I was going to work with specific diagnosed conditions, kind of more medical nutrition therapy. So people who have specific hormone imbalances, or people who have specific autoimmunity or gastrointestinal disorders, like what can we do from a nutrition point of view to support or be therapeutic in those cases? And so I started that. And what I realized, I don't know, a couple months in, was that most of my clients did not have the basics of nutrition. And so even though we could potentially do these more specific or advanced protocols, we were going to get nowhere if their diet was still the standard American diet. And so that's when I really decided to, I guess, niche down. But it was actually just then becoming like super interested in just hammering the basics of what people need in nutrition. So that's when the vision really started, because I think that's when I realized how much of a need there was. You know, I think Adrian has described it best about CrossFit. It's sort of a subculture within a subculture. Like on average, people in the United States don't exercise. So already CrossFit's kind of a smaller percentage of that. But then even within the population that likes to exercise, CrossFit's its own little like unique little bubble of people, typically type A, of like, let's go really work insanely hard in the gym and see what we can do every day, right? So it's this like really tiny population that when you surround yourself with all of these CrossFitters and the seminar staff, you don't see how the basic nutrition is missing. I mean, certainly we did, like obviously at the level 1 and stuff like that. But I do think that I sort of didn't quite understand how missing it was. I know that might sound really dumb, but it's true. And so then I was like, okay, this is going to be my focus. And I really didn't know that until, I don't know, 3-4 months after I'd left.
And you have this 3-pillar method, and it consists of the 10 principles, correct?
So my 10 principles of nutrition, the way that I like to compare it, and I'll do a CrossFit analogy for this audience. My 10 principles of nutrition are me trying to give people kind of the roadmap, which I would say is similar to saying, you know, CrossFit's constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. Those are the principles. And so I was trying to think, okay, well, what are the principles of nutrition that we have to abide by? And I really do like that as my main message in nutrition. And it turns out it's like, okay, calories are a thing, macros matter. You all need vitamin A. Like they're not like revolutionary things, but they're kind of this roadmap or framework for people to understand nutrition. And then we have all of these hundreds, you could say thousands of different diets of how people think you should implement those principles. Just like there's lots of different programming styles out there that you can follow to implement CrossFit. Some are more effective than others. We have all of the different diets that are getting after the principles in different ways. And so my 3 pillars method is my biased approach, my biased method of implementing the principles. It's the way that I've found captures the most principles in a sustainable way for my clients. That doesn't mean that there's not other ways to skin the nutrition cat. That doesn't mean that there's not other diets that are effective. I mean, millions of people have been wildly successful without the 3 pillars method. So sometimes I have to come to terms with that somehow. And it's by, okay, they're addressing the principles in this different way. So the 3 pillars method is really my expression of what I think are these kind of unchanging truths or principles in nutrition.
And you presented in Boulder. Was the event called Ignite?
Yeah, there was 2 in Boulder, but the first one was Ignite. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was only a short clipping that I saw on the YouTubes. But what I got from it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I got that, like simply said, you have to understand before you can apply a how-to. And the way that you present it is you need these principles. That's like your foundation, and the principles guide the method, which is the how to. So actually, without understanding your why, right, your principles, you're going to continue to try all these different methods and jump around and ping pong because you actually don't really know what you're trying to achieve. Am I right in that summary?
Yeah, there's that beautiful quote by Emerson, and it's something like, there's a million different methods. And if you don't understand the underlying principles, you're going to kind of keep being in the washing machine cycle of diets until you finally are like, oh, okay, that's why this diet worked or did not. And so that's what I really wanted to try to provide people. And to be honest, it's what I needed. It's what I needed to kind of ground myself and understand, okay, why does this person have wildly success, like huge success with intermittent fasting and the other person doesn't? What's going on with paleo? What's going on with veganism? Because you have to start to come to terms with the fact that there are lots of different ways that people are successful. And I think that's something that I don't see enough in the nutrition space. And one of the things that I really look up to for the people that I follow or, want to be like or help be like is that you have to recognize, okay, there's lots of different ways that people have been successful. Why is that the case? Now, you might have a biased reason to teach the way that you do, just like I do. I like my 3 pillars method. But yeah, it turns out people can be effective counting calories. Turns out people can be effective with the zone. Turns out people can be effective with intermittent fasting. Why is that? And can I help people understand why that is before worrying about like, oh, you must do my, registered trademark diet.
And I actually took your course way back when you first brought them out. And I'm like, this is so good. I'm going to say each one.
Okay.
And because you're Miss Efficiency, I know you'll be able to just give us a quick example. So number 1, the quantity of food you eat in calories determines weight. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think for a period of time, I didn't believe calories were a thing. I think there's still some backlash on the internet that calories doesn't matter. It turns out they do. They do control weight. It's a lot more nuanced than that, though. It turns out you have to look at other factors in your diet besides calories, but they certainly are a very central component to weight and even health.
And if we were just to stay there, there would be a lot of questions. But your second principle is the quantity of food you eat in macronutrient sense determines composition.
Yeah. So, macronutrients, protein, carbon, fat, are significant sources of calories. So when we're looking at a total number of calories in the diet, they have to be coming from a certain number of macronutrients. And so how we split them down, that macronutrient distribution, is going to affect our body composition, namely by way of protein, of course, influencing muscle mass. And you can even argue carbohydrates by way of influencing the intensity that somebody can create in their workouts so that drive that muscle mass.
Yeah. So just to play it back.
Yeah.
If I'm going to eat 2,000 calories a day, but 1,500 of those calories are coming from like carbohydrates, donuts. Yeah, that's okay. That's why my composition would be affected, which is lean mass relative to body fat. Correct?
Exactly.
Number 3, timing only matters to the extent it affects quantity. Meal timing.
Yeah. So when you eat food, only matters if it changes the number of calories and macros you're eating. I think people think, okay, well, I've got these 2,000 calories. If I split them up in these really mysterious or different ways, I'm going to have big changes. And it's not true. We don't find that in the literature, that so long as quantity is controlled, that it doesn't really matter when you eat.
So there's not a magic window?
There's not a magic window. Ultimately, a lot of this stuff will come back to where is the person going to be sustainable? Some people are like, well, I did only 2 meals a day and that's better for me. And it's like, well, that's because you could sustain that. That doesn't mean that you would have had poor results if you did 4 meals a day of the same quantity, if you liked that cadence based on your schedule, food preferences, feeling after eating, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And it is interesting because it speaks to lifestyle too. I mean, if the days I get up at, let's say 7 o'clock, relative to if I get up at 5 o'clock, I'm like, oh man, I am 2 hours behind on feeding. Like that's how I see it now. I got to feed. And so now I'm like, and if I get caught up in something in the day, and for people at home, it could be kids, like work, whatever. Now you're like, oh wow, I'm in a caloric deficit and I'm going to bed in an hour. Like, so that's brilliant. Number 4, quality of food determined by macronutrient density.
Micronutrient, I think. Micronutrient density,
did
yeah.
you say micro?
Yeah.
Are you sure, EC? The quality of food determined by micronutrient density determines health.
Yeah. And this is always where I kind of have to back up a little bit and be like, even what we were talking about with fitness in 100 words, this still cannot be a perfect description of everything in terms of physiology. I'm doing my best here to give people a roadmap to understand nutrition. And why I say that is this is saying micronutrient density, vitamins and minerals, and things like even fiber and phytochemicals, we could argue, are really impacting people's health. And that is true. But you know what else impacts people's health? Principles 1 and 2. Turns out quantity impacts your health as well. It's just that, again, this is kind of a roadmap so that people understand the foods that have these high density of vitamins and minerals. They're also going to be lower in calories, but that's really helping out some of the health outcomes that we want.
I love how they all play back into another one, because for the micronutrient density determining health, also you need to look at number 2, because it's your macronutrient. It's almost like you thought about this on another level. All right, number 5. This one's going to be hard for you guys because you always want the one thing, but it is never the one thing.
Yeah. It's so, I go through phases of which principle I think is most important for people. And it turns out none of them are. It's just what they need at the time. But yeah, it's never one thing in terms of what nutrient we're talking about. People are like, well, do I need more calcium? It's like, well, what about protein, fiber, and potassium? It's like there's so many nutrients that we need to have go right in the diet. And so it's never one nutrient that's really the only nutrient you need to focus on or worry about. But then I like to broaden it too. People will think about, okay, well, if I want to lose weight, I just need to look at my diet. And it's like, well, no. I mean, sometimes the best hack for improving your weight is exercise or even sleep because you're going to be less hungry and more motivated to stick to your gosh darn diet plan, right? So then that's where it starts to expand out too. It's never one thing that if you want these outcomes in terms of weight, health, or fitness, that we're going to have to look at diet and lifestyle. And so it's just trying to keep people broad, because I think sometimes it's like, okay, well, if I'm just going to take this magnesium supplement, it's all that I need. And I generally find that once we hone down to that level of like, oh, I'm just going to take my magnesium supplement, you've lost the plot. There's probably other factors that need to be addressed first instead of that little idea, that one nutrient that you're fixated on.
It's almost like it's broad, general, and inclusive.
Yes.
Number 6, all diets control quantity to varying levels of precision.
Yeah. This is what I needed to know years ago. It took me a while to understand it. But yeah, like when people lose weight on paleo, it's because they've cut out processed foods, they've cut out calories, and guess what? They're going to lose weight. When people do the no sugar diet, even when people do something like carnivore diet, which I don't think is great for long term, but nevertheless, people can see weight improvements because they've cut out all of these processed foods. So oftentimes we think these diets are operating in these really different ways, when in reality, they're just different levers to control quantity. And oftentimes it's like paleo is not really that precise. It's just sort of saying, cut out these foods. And so this is why we see variable results. Some people get really lean and other people do too many paleo brownies. But then we can find things like the zone or counting calories, which are going to be much more precise. And therefore they're controlling that outcome to a greater degree of precision.
And that falls in line with your 800-gram challenge too, which is really great from a psychological standpoint, because your whole premise is like, don't restrict, add, but add more of the things that have more macronutrient density and they keep you fuller for longer. And yeah, sure, go ahead, eat all those other like desirable things, but you're probably not going to want to because you're so full with all the good stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge premise of it. I mean, you had asked earlier about the psychology. The 800-gram challenge, ultimately, I didn't start it from a psychological perspective. I was like, oh, this is a really great way to balance quality and quantity. And what I learned after having a lot of people go through it was how much it helped with psychology, that not focusing on the no's and focusing on the ads, it really flipped the script on dieting for people and it made it more sustainable. And they started to believe they could do this nutrition thing. And that was some of my teaching along these years of being like, oh yeah, psychology, you got to have the person bought in on this thing or it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it works for me. Because I'm not thinking now, oh, I like a little naughty treat at the end of the day. I'll say naughty treat. People are going to kill me for that. Like, don't say naughty.
I know what
I'm
you
like,
mean.
it is naughty. So I'm like, a naughty treat. And, but I know if I'm eating healthy throughout the day, and sometimes actually I get to the end of the day and I don't even really want it. Certainly if I have like a kiwi or something, which is so sweet, or a pineapple. So it does work. Before I move on to the next one though, you said you'd learned something from the potato hack, and that was that turns out if you eat all these potatoes, you don't want to maybe eat other things. Did you pull any inspiration for 800-gram challenge from that?
No, I didn't. In fact, I didn't even really remember I did it until I was pulling together one of that Ignite talk, actually. And I was like, God, I've done some really silly nutrition things. No, I didn't really pull any inspiration, but I do remember that it did really start to hone in on like, am I actually hungry? Do I actually want to eat anymore?
Mm.
And kind of getting more into the listening to your hunger versus I have to eat these 4 square meals a day or whatever.
I couldn't do the potato thing.
I think it only lasted 4 or 5 days. I don't remember.
Is it supposed to be a long term?
No, I mean it's not supposed. It's supposed to be this quick weight loss diet, yada yada yada.
I think,
and I was just doing it more for like the fun experiment of
yeah.
it.
Okay. Cool. You did it, so I don't have to. Thank you.
I don't recommend it. Again, disclaimer: do not do it.
Noted. All right, 7, big one. We talked about it. Sustainability is the most important factor in diet selection.
Yeah. And it's, this doesn't mean that you just pick what's easy. If you want to change, you have to change what you're doing, but it's the most sustainable level of change. It's meeting you where you are and pushing you slightly. It's, again, like when somebody, we'll just keep doing with the CrossFit references here. If somebody comes in the gym and they don't have a muscle up, you don't just send them to the high rings and say, like, give it a shot. Okay, what can you do? Can you row? Okay, we're going to try there. Right? Maybe you have to work on the transition, all of that stuff. It's the same thing here. We are going to have to push a little bit. You can't just eat cupcakes and ho-hos all day.
Yeah.
But what's the sustainable level of change that you can do? Because again, if we're looking for long-term results, we have a really poor track record in terms of nutrition. So we got to figure out, how do we get this person to stick to the thing and stay focused on that versus what might be the most ideal or best, protocol.
It's a good point, because there's this tendency sometimes to kind of sugarcoat things, no pun intended. It's like, well, you don't have to, but at a certain point, you got to stress the body to adapt. And that might even be discomfort psychologically, or you got to break through. So I'm glad you said that. Controversial one. The universal diet problem is processed foods.
Yes. And we have a lot of research to show that as well. But yes. And I think that's what people don't see when they do all these, quote, different diets, when they do the celery juice diet, when they do the potato hack diet, when they do paleo, when they do the 3 shakes a day, when they do carnivore. It's like you've stopped eating ultra processed foods, or at least cut down on them significantly. And it turns out it's something like, it's crazy. It's something like 60% of our calories come from ultra processed foods on average. So it's like, that's why these diets are, quote, working for people. It doesn't even mean they're optimal, but they're certainly more optimal than the standard American diet, but because you're reducing quantity, at least for a short period of time. So yeah, we're overeating all of the processed stuff.
I have so many questions about overeating. And I would ask you this again. This is the answer. If you could answer this, you'd be a billionaire. It's like, why do we overeat?
Well, some of it's the biological drive to eat and to enjoy like calorically dense foods. And that's a lot of why the GLP-1 drugs have been so effective, is because they actually can quiet the mind a little bit around that biological drive to eat. And the further somebody gets away from a healthy weight, the stronger that drive is going to be for them to keep doing that. It's like a reward pathway that they've kind of ingrained over and over.
The GLP-1 is necessary for some people, but there's a big hole there for long-term success, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think, right now it's indicated for people that are obese or people that are overweight and also have another comorbidity. For example, maybe they're overweight and have high blood pressure. And I think we need to be really outcome focused. Like if we're really interested in people's health, we have to be open to the idea of what is going to get them to a better position and a lower health risk. And so this is, again, where people are like, oh, everything should be solved with diet and exercise. Look, I'm going to tell you, go look at the statistic on this. It's not going very well. It's not going very well. So if we have a drug that helps people take multiple tens of pounds off their body, I think it's averaging something in the 20% range of weight loss, which is unheard of from a weight loss drug. And remember what I told you, diet and lifestyle can do on average 5%. So it's getting close to what you see with gastric bypass, that we have to be open that like these people are better off when you reduce that type of body weight on the frame. I mean, they are lowering their health risk and improving their quality of life tremendously. So I don't totally understand the backlash about it. It's like, are you really interested in these people's health? Now, does that mean that everybody we see in the media needs to be on GLP-1s? No. If this is more of an aesthetic goal that we're chasing, certainly we should be doing this with diet and exercise. Oh, and even still, people on GLP-1s, they're going to want to do the whole diet and exercise thing too. It doesn't absolve them of that either.
So it's a concurrent protocol.
Would be concurrent.
Yeah.
And then some people will be able to get off them. I have had clients who have gotten off GLP-1s, or my coaches also have clients who have gotten off GLP-1s But the research so far does not suggest that will be the majority of people, that it will be a long-term adherence to the medication.
I think you talk about this in a little bit more detail too on your Consistency Project podcast. I think you've got episodes on that. So if you're interested in more, go there. All right. Number 9. Ooh, I'd love to explain. Your diet can't be validated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a certain amount of health risk out there that we can't totally absolve. And I can't tell you, what's the best thing for you. Like I can tell you where we see health risk reduce on a population level. Don't smoke, exercise regularly, maintain a healthy weight, eat some fruits and veggies. Like that's what we can do from a preventative point of view. But then there's all these like individual questions that people will have. Well, like how much wine is too much wine, and how much deli turkey, because, processed meat can increase your colon cancer risk. How much deli turkey is too much deli turkey? And it's like, I don't know. There is these guidances that we have based on population and risk studies, the best that we can do. And then there's a certain amount of unknown. And it's sort of just like, you kind of have to pick your risk tolerance. How much, I always like to compare it to speeding, like how fast do you want to drive? And there's going to be all of these decisions in nutrition. There's nothing that I can do to guarantee that this is the most optimal diet for you, and it will perfectly prevent any condition that, might happen.
I think that was also a Pat Sherwoodism. I heard him talk about speeding and crashing in relative to technique. It's like, just because you do CrossFit, let's say, and you do it horribly, like you have all the major mechanical errors with all the load, doesn't mean you're going to hurt yourself, but the risk is higher. And it's the same with speeding, right? It's like you could drive incredibly fast your whole life and never have an accident. You could eat all the deli meat in the world and never get colon cancer. So it's yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, last one. There are diminishing returns on attaining perfection.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this could play into some of the neuroticism that you were mentioning about kind of in the very beginning, the 1% and getting the most ideal, maybe nutrients in your diet or the ingredients or whatever. I see this a lot though with body composition, especially in kind of the CrossFit community. There might be people who want to lean out, but by all intents purposes, they are already quite lean. And, to get to this increased level of leanness, it's going to cost so much more in terms of effort and even pain to get there, that like the more and more, the leaner that you want to get, or the more perfect you want your diet to be in some ideal sense, it's just, you're going to keep putting in more work. And there is a point at which you don't get any value out of it. Like I said, for a lot of people, there can be a place when their nutrition is done. I think from a body composition perspective, there is a place where people should be done, but they might be chasing kind of the cover of the magazines. That's going to require a huge amount of work to a level that you did not have to do before to get there.
And not just costly for you personally who's going through that, but it's costly in terms of the relationships in your life and the fun things you want to do and all the things you kind of pushing to the side. And I'm not talking about the 1% that for a certain period of their time, it's all about the thing. You got to, have no friends for 5 years because you want to win the CrossFit Games. I'm just kidding. Kidding. But yeah, it's costly just too on a relational level, probably, totally. I would imagine. Yeah.
100%.
Awesome. Okay. So principles are important. And when we say principles, we're talking about goals, habits, like lifestyle, these are all things you're considering when you're trying to build your principles.
So this is actually, another place I was influenced with CrossFit. So when we were training for seminar staff, somebody who was very influential for me was Adrian. 100%. And we were doing a lot with how do you answer participant questions? And the way that he would always try to help us get better at that was, okay, what is the concept they don't understand that prevented them from answering their own question? And so ultimately, that's the concept that served as my base to come up with the principles. It's like, what do I keep coming back to about nutrition that people don't understand of why they have this question? I was like, oh, they don't understand calories are a thing. Oh, they don't understand micronutrients are a thing. Oh, they don't understand sustainability matters in psychology. Oh, they don't understand the trade-offs they're going to have to do to get that really lean. So my principles really came to be, and again, I don't think they're perfect. I don't think they describe everything in physiology, but to me, they're a pretty good framework to help people understand the factors at play to get them to their weight, health, and fitness goals. I love them. In the sense of a teaching methodology, again, they're not perfect, but I think the problem with them in quotes is they don't ever mention any foods to eat. They never tell people what to do. So like, they're kind of an interesting theoretical framework, but like, you have a client come in and they just want to get started on nutrition. I mean, they're not going to want to wade through 10 principles and like understand all this stuff. And then you never tell them what to eat. So that's what my 3 pillars method is answering. It's like, okay, well, how am I going to help people get after these 10 principles? What am I actually going to tell them to do come Monday morning in the kitchen? And that might be more of the zone approach from a CrossFit. And then for me, it's my 3 pillars method. So the principles are kind of, to me, these unchanging truths that we have to answer if we want to improve our weight, health, and fitness. Now the question is how we do that. And that's then my 3 pillars method for me.
I love it. And I think, I mean, even the quality of food in there, you speak about macronutrients and micros. It's just not laid out as obvious as maybe like you were saying, but in your content and all your educational resources and your funny videos, you've done a bunch of them. You have this is not a cheat day, and it shows like the infamous donut, right? We've got the coffee, we've got the eggs and the fruit and the vegetables, and then there's a ice cream like sandwich, and there's maybe a cocktail. I don't know but it's like, this is not a cheat day. This is just life. Like when you go away, and then you have another one where you're like, oh, I want to go to Taco Bell. I'm hungry. Wait a second. There's this store across the road. It's called Wawa. It's down there on the East Coast. And you go in and you kind of show people, hey, this is how you can spend about $11 and get all your macro and micronutrient requirements. And that's where your 3 pillars method, I think, is really helpful. Is the application of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, again, like I'd like the principles from a teaching point of view, an education point of view, but it's like, I can just see a new client. They're like, what's to get started on nutrition? Like, well, let me start with 10 principles. I mean, yeah. It's kind of like CrossFit in the sense of, what are you going to do? Well, it's constantly varied functional movement, high intensity. What was always the joke? I don't know. I'm sure you still say in the level 1, but it's like, well, why don't you come tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and I'll show you. It's like, how do I get started? We're going to do squats and we're going to do pull-ups. That's how people express CrossFit. And so it's the same thing with nutrition is that, yeah, the principles are interesting, but people need to know like, okay, well, what am I actually eating?
Yeah. Show, don't tell.
Right.
But tell a little bit.
Right.
All right. I've been very excited to get to this part.
Uh-oh.
Because you have a lot of hard telling truths. What are some of your biggest frustrations when it comes to nutrition? Like, what are we getting massively? What makes you like just sometimes want to rip your eyeballs out and your ears off so you don't see or hear it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of frustration with the online environment that I mentioned, it's what I was sucked into too. I mean, there's some people out there who have MD after their name or PhD after their name, and they're saying some really wacky stuff that's almost like, you clearly have 0 clients. Like you clearly have done this with 0 people, because it's just like this theoretical maybe that doesn't actually show any clinical outcomes. They're just basing it all on a mechanism and won't actually work in real life dealing with free living people anyway. And so I get a huge amount of frustration from that because 1, I was sucked into it. And then 2, there's a lot of great practitioners out there giving a lot of great information. But again, it's much harder to draw attention when you're like, let's eat some fruits and vegetables than it is to say, bananas are killing you, or this ingredient in your grocery store is like causing death. It's just, it's a little bit harder to capture people's attention with the basics. So that's a huge frustration.
It's all right, because you're out there combating that. You're
trying. It feels like you're trying to hold back the ocean some days, but there's a lot of people out there trying. Yeah.
One of your Instagrams that's just a classic and it comes back on repeat is when it's like a news headline and you're like, woman eats 4 bananas and lives.
And still alive. Yep. Still alive.
So funny. Okay. Second kind of, I guess, hot take, let's say, where are we'll call quote, like wolves in sheep's clothing, like these distractions? And I know you said before, it's not in your principles, it's not one thing, but what are the big ones that are really not serving us well?
Yeah. I think understanding, again, your quantity of food that you're eating and whether or not that's appropriate for your goals is huge. And I think a lot of people are missing that. I think we're so focused on these details of like, I have a reel about this as well, but it's like, you'll talk to somebody about like, tell me about your nutrition. And it's like, well, I'm eating paleo and I don't drink alcohol and I don't eat a lot of sugar. And I eat lots of fruits and vegetables. And it's like, okay, but they don't know how many calories they're consuming. They want to lose weight, but they don't know how many calories they're consuming. It's like, that's the variable that controls the results. We have to get there. We have to get there. And so we're doing all of these things around the quantitative variable that's going to predict your outcome. And so those are like all of these shiny objects or whatever that people are focusing on. Well, now I'm going to get this better probiotic yogurt, or now, now I'm going to get this functional food that's advertised out there, or I'm going to get, this new supplement. And it's like, you don't know the quantity of food that supports your goals. That's where we have to start. I mean, I don't want to say we have to start there because that gets a little too dogmatic. There's more than one thing in nutrition, but it's like this glaring variable that they ultimately want to know because that's the goal that they want, but they're not addressing it.
Mm-hmm. I read something on your LinkedIn about Optimize Me Nutrition, and it's that you offer products without dogma and overly restrictive rules which hinder results. But there does have to be some rules, right? Like you said, you need a baseline. There's a lot of information out there on how you find your baseline. Do you have a preferred method? Is there kind of like the way?
Yeah. My way is my 3 pillars method. And so we first add fruits and veggies to the diet with the 800 gram challenge. So people add by weight 800 grams. What we find a sustainable number, might not be perfectly 800 amount of fruits and veggies for the person. And again, things like potatoes and beans and olives count. So there's lots of other things than people think about for fruits and veggies. So they do that. They're getting some good quality in their diet. Then we look at protein. And I typically put people at the 0.7 gram per pound level, might be of their target weight if they're more than 25 pounds away. But typically about 0.7 grams per pound, might also go up to 1 gram per pound if they're already very lean and very highly muscular. But anyway, so then we look at the protein quantity, and then we actually look at calories. And the way that we look at calories is I have them observe their diet, weigh and measure everything they eat for about 10 days. I don't give them numbers. I want them to start where they are. Because again, if I'm going to make this diet sustainable, I don't want to just put out a number where they could lose weight. I actually want to maximize the number of calories they could get to lose weight, because guess what? That's going to be more sustainable or noticing a theme here. Yeah. Like if you can lose weight, and I have had clients lose weight at 2,000 calories or more, that is way, way easier to do than 1,200. So we're going to figure out what you're eating now. And it turns out if you learn that you're eating more than you thought, it's actually a good thing, because now that means that we have more buffer to work with in the diet, that we don't have to diet down at 1,200 calories, and we don't want to be there. That's very hard to do in a modern food environment. So that's what I have people do is I go through these. First, we're going to add fruits and veggies. Then we're going to add protein. Then we're going to round out the diet with the right number of calories. After they kind of observe their diet for 10 days and figure out what that baseline is, then we're going to change that baseline depending on where they want to be. So again, most of my clientele wants to improve body composition. They want to improve fitness, but it's definitely more improved body composition. We're typically going to lower those calories that they just kind of calculated as their baseline by about 10%. And then we're just going to hammer consistency, and we're going to keep going. And we're checking with our body weight. Is it changing? Good. We're going to stay at this number. Is it not changing? Okay. We're going to lower the calories further.
It's great. And how do people learn more about, like, where should they go if they want to learn more about getting involved in 3-pillar method?
Probably optimizemeenutrition.com. I also now have an app out called, it's the 3 Pillars Method app. It's a web app. So 3pillarsmethod.com will also get them there. And it has the programs to take them step by step through it. And then I also do kind of like my masterclass format and cohort formats as well.
And you do one-on-ones too, if people are...
I do. Some are definitely, I do one-on-ones. So I've got a lot of one-on-ones going right now. Yeah.
Congratulations. Getting an app up and running is no small task.
Thank you. To be honest, I found the email that when I resigned from CrossFit, I wanted to build an app. Well, I should say that once I got to the point of like realizing I wanted to do basic nutrition, I wanted to build an app. So like 4 months post resignation or whatever. And thank God it didn't happen then because I didn't have the clarity of what I wanted at that point. And so I was able to use different platforms, to test with the clientele, see where I got success, refine the message before building it. So it's been a vision for a long time. And so it's really cool to see it come to be. But I'm glad it didn't happen right away.
If you're not subscribed to the Consistency Project with EC and Patrick Cummings, who is also old school media, just the man, do it. Because your stuff is so great, because you do a lot in a very short time. You're, like I said, your miss efficiency, you're right there. And then, and you learn so much, and it's credible. Like you're always one of my go-tos when people say, where do we go? I'm like, EC. So thank you for taking the time to work so hard and putting that together.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. This is my final question for you. Dreams are free. the world's your oyster. What would you like for the world when it comes to nutrition?
Holy cats. I think one, for people to know it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. One of the things that I really love is giving people the power that they don't actually need me. I don't want long-term clients, and that's not because I don't like them, but because they can do this. And so I really want people to have the power and the knowledge to do this themselves. That's why I do a heavy teaching emphasis. I think, though, from like a global society point of view, I do think something needs to be done about the processed food environment. And I always compare it to like cigarettes. Like, how did we make improvements on people cutting back on smoking? We actually cut back on their availability. Now, I think people should be allowed to buy sugar, of course, but I think just its accessibility and its ubiquitous nature everywhere, that if we really want to, quote, help people, we need to also shape our environment so that they can help themselves.
And is there anything you would like to leave our community with before we wrap it up?
I think exercise is like the gateway drug for making nutrition changes. And I think it's why CrossFit has been successful with helping people with nutrition changes, because I think it really helps the person start to identify as a healthy person, and then that they're ready to take on the nutrition changes. So keep fighting the good fight for us, Denise.
Truly, you had such an impact on my life in the fitness space in CrossFit. And it's just so great to see that when you broke ties with the company, that you continue to really still deliver that message. And we're just better as a society for it. So if there's anything we can do to help you continue, let us know. But I just think the world of you, even though you scare me still.
Back at you, not the scary part, but thank you so much, Denise.
I'll work on trying to scare you. No, thank you, EC. You rock. You rock.
Me too.
Okay, as promised at the tippy top of this episode, here's a very quick conversation that EC had recently with Jason Ackerman of the Best Hour of Their Day crew. Quick reminder, besthouroftheirday.com/affiliatecon if you want to learn more and get yourself a ticket or multiple tickets at AffiliateCon October 24th through the 26th in Dallas, Texas. If you use the code OPTIMIZEME, all capitalized, all one word, I think you'll save some money on your ticket. So you should definitely do so. If you want to go, save yourself some dough, and I'll stop rhyming now, I promise. Here you go. Here's Jason and EC.
Well, Jason, thanks so much for coming on to talk about AffiliateCon.
Here we are, right into it.
That's right. Tell us a little about what the heck AffiliateCon is.
Well, you know my good friend Jason Fernandez, right?
I'm aware of Fern, yes.
Fern, he came up with this idea, or at least he will have you believe it was his idea. Pretty sure it was my idea. And it's a gathering for all CrossFit walks of life. And I would even throw out there really all walks of life, but specifically affiliate owners, coaches, and members or athletes. So really anyone involved in the CrossFit space, there's going to be something for you, not just something, but 2 full days for you. And like I said, whether you coach at CrossFit or, you listen to EC because you work at Lifetime or any of the other, boutique style gyms, if you're a coach, you're going to learn.
Yeah, I think I was just checking out some of the details about it, and I saw that you were also saying for athletes. So can you tell us a little bit more about like why all of these ranges from the owners to the coach to the athlete will be interested in coming? Like, what's going on at this event?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but athletes should eat well too. Is that true?
Oh, apparently that's going to help their outcomes.
So, you're going to be presenting, for example, and you might be presenting to how can affiliate owners further the nutrition journey for their members, but certainly an athlete should want to hear that and learn from the best in the industry, EC Sinkowski, about why they should eat fruits and vegetables. By the way, EC, I'm eating at least 800 grams a day.
I love it. At one point, you kind of veered a little towards carnivore, and I knew that you were going to come back around. But, you got to let people do their own thing sometimes, Jason.
No, I appreciate that. I'm like a child to you. Unlike Madison, do your own thing. She's 4. I'm 47, but yes.
Okay.
But let me tell you this.
You're back around to the grams. Okay, glad to hear it.
I'm going to throw something out there you'll find interesting.
Okay.
So you've heard of Liver King.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so whatever you want to believe about Liver King and all his, his mental issues, etc., there's a documentary on Netflix. Have you watched it?
I have not.
It's interesting, but, what I gained from it was his kids were sick, right? And his course of action to fix that was through nutrition. Now, did he go maybe a little off the deep end? Yeah, but as I was watching that, a lot of what he was saying rings true. I mean, everything you would say, right? So I was like, spoke to Roz, my wife, and I was like, we should eat this way for the kids, so et cetera. And she was like, well, why don't you do it? And I was
Smart
like,
woman.
yeah. So I watched that on a Saturday. This is probably 3 months ago. I went meat and pretty much fruit. I'll have like vegetables here and there. Haven't deviated once. Feel better than ever.
But you said you're over 1,000 grams or something.
Oh yeah, no, I eat. So I eat. And I'll tell you something else about it. I eat a massive bowl of berries at the end of every day with honey on it and bananas, and I'm like into cherries right now. And I don't know if it's a Colorado thing, but I was on a drug called ezetimibe. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I don't actually know what it's for.
It's for cholesterol. It's like not a statin, but it prevents your body from. And eating this way, my doctor was like, you should stop that. So off of a cholesterol drug, eating a ton of meat.
Oh, I see.
And also, he said, your insulin level is undetectable. And I mean, I have a ton of fruit. Like, not like you would think it's still with honey and everything. So, point is,
it's almost like total quantity matters, not just the specific food, yes or no. Yeah.
it turns out you know what you're doing. That's what I'm getting at.
That's awesome, though. Well, that's good to hear. Yes, but I will be presenting. There's going to be some other people presenting, so that's why athletes can go and still be learning.
Yeah, I mean, other great examples. You've got Hinshaw, who can clearly speak to affiliate ownership, but if you're interested in improving your aerobic capacity, or High Rocks is a big thing, which he's going to actually be running like a High Rocks style event.
Oh, cool.
Kelly Starrett, you've heard of, like as far as mobility goes. Jason Kalipa, all people that are going to speak to all demographics, from ownership to coaching to membership. And that's because people like you and the others are going to have multiple presentations. So, you'll be able to catch, you speaking at different times.
When is it?
October 24th through 26th. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday is going to be more of a social event. If you get in early enough, Hinshaw is running a High Rocks style workout before we kick off registration. And then, like back in the day on seminar staff, I'm sure there's going to be some partying going on. Some people, but that's the cool thing. You can come in and see the first keynote of the day. You can come in a little later. It's choose your own adventure.
And Dallas area.
Dallas, Texas. Yep, October 24th to 26th.
I love it. Tell me just a little bit, like, how big are you expecting this to be? And, I know some of the behind the scenes, so some of these answers I know, but I'd love to hear it from you for our audience. Also, like, how big is this expected to be? And do you really think that people who are attending are going to get some good time with the speakers besides just kind of hearing them speak?
Fern's goal is to have 500 participants there. So he's a little crazy, but, I'm hoping, 300-400 people. I don't know about you, but especially when I was an affiliate owner, like anytime I'm surrounded by other owners, other coaches, other members, you just leave motivated. So one, they're going to be interacting with other affiliate. I had a conversation with a good friend yesterday, and she was like going through the emotions of affiliate ownership. And I was like, this is normal. And she was like, what are you talking about? No one feels this way. I was like, every affiliate
Everybody.
owner. Right. So just being around those people. And then as far as hanging out with the likes of you, I mean, we're not going to force presenters to like go talk to people, but I know that the people that we have there are social butterflies, and whether
we'll
it's the social event, there's 2 blocks every day for networking. So if you want to, we've got some great partners like Rep Fitness and Push Press and many others. So there's going to be time there, and in those networking times, CrossFit HQ is sending some of their best seminar staff. Nadia, Denise Thomas, Katie Hayes, and a few others are going to be there running like level 2 style drills so you can improve as a coach.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I knew there was some built-in networking time. So I think there's going to be a lot of interfacing. And of course, I'm going to hang out with people. I'm sure the other presenters will as well. I think one of the last kind of big questions I was thinking of is why? Why the event? I mean, what need do you think it's filling?
Well, for me, the why was because Fern told me to do it. So I had no choice. We are partners, but he runs the show. But But really, you know, what we found was you go to the CrossFit Games and it's all about the athletes. You go to some of these summits that CrossFit is doing and it's all about the owners. But there was nothing that hit all the demographics of, you know, whether you're, you know, like I've said a few times, owner, coach, or member, there's something there for you. And selfishly, we just wanted to hang out with awesome people, you know, and we like to learn, you know, like I've joked earlier, like I've learned an immense amount from you. The other people there are tremendous. So we get to watch and we get to listen and benefit from being there. And also, we are working on, if you have your level 3 or level 4 CEUs. So if you attend, I think there's going to be 16 CEUs.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea because I do think you're right that sometimes these meetings are always slapped on the back of something else, which I get, you know, people are coming into town for a competition, for example, that is a great time, but like to just get everyone together for this and for this only, I think is a great focus. We're going to drop a link in the show notes. I'll also push it out to my crew. But yeah, I've got a code, right? Optimize Me will get them $100 off registration, correct?
Correct. If they use the code Optimize Me, one word, I don't know if it's caps or I would use all caps just to be safe, but it's $100 off a ticket.
Awesome. Anything else that they should know about registration, what to expect, things that I probably didn't ask but should have?
No, I think you've asked everything. Like I said, Dallas, Texas, October 24th to 26th. Some of the best speakers. I don't want to miss people, but I didn't mention people like David Osorio. You know, you're good friends with Dave from South Brooklyn. You know, Nicole Christensen, obviously. So people that can speak to everything there. And I think the coolest part is just going to be surrounding yourself with other owners, coaches, and members, because we're often in our bubble, and it's cool to just hear from other people.
Yeah, I liked your point about the affiliate owner thinking they're the only one. I feel that way with entrepreneurship. You know, get a bunch of people in the same room together to going through the same thing, and it's going to be great because you understand each other's struggles and triumphs too. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Jason. I guess I'll see you in October.